Hey everybody, welcome to Wing Talk. I'm Steve Schlesinger. Today is our Nothing But a G Thing baby show. We've got Adam G and Rory G with us today. But first, we're going to say hello to one of our favorite pilots in charge, our personal Sherpa for INAV and everything INAV, Mr. Mark Hoffman. Mark, how are you doing today?
Hey Steve, I'm doing great. Looking forward to a good show as always, and it's great to have Rory and Adam here again.
Yeah, so looking forward to speaking with those guys once again. You know, I was going to say, the reason I threw it to you first is that this is the continuation of the British invasion here today. We're just like the outcasts as far as you and I are, the American and the German, and everyone else is British. So for one small little island, there seems to be a lot of people who love flying INAV on that island. So fantastic. So speaking of one of our favorite British guys, Luke, I understand you have not been feeling super well. So yeah, I'm hoping. Thank you for making it. We weren't sure you were going to make it here today, and we're glad to hear you don't have COVID, just a winter cold or the flu or something like that. So how are you feeling?
Yeah, I wasn't feeling great up until about midday today. Luckily, I've done a few COVID tests and it's all come back negative. So hopefully I'll be better and all good soon enough.
Yeah, they're like canceling everything out here. All the football games, not all of them, but there's 3 football games that got canceled this weekend because the COVID's been breaking out. Speaking of someone who works a hell of a lot and who has done a lot for the group, but unfortunately has a job where I guess you have to build projects by the end of the year, and they've asked 45 hours worth of work for him in the last 3 days. Darren, how are you feeling today, babes?
Tired. No, it's basically I work at a really small company, and we had a big project to get done by by Christmas. So the last 8 weeks have been pretty hectic, but the last month or so has been mad, absolutely mad. Yeah, it's all good.
Are you close? Are you going to get it done before Christmas?
Ask me that in the new year.
Fabulous. Okay, well, hey, thanks for making it here today. Before we get to our guests, I just wanted to bring up with both you guys. Now, I know you're going to say that you've come out with a really nice manual that explains everything. You wrote this a couple months ago, all the new changes with INAV 4.0. But one of the things I was out flying with Rich yesterday, and he's like, I'm just getting comfortable now with the whole idea. I should be really switching my planes over to INAV 3.0. Now we got INAV 4.0. So there are some things that I saw in there that struck my attention, like the black box improvements for H43 and soaring. But is there anything that you would really say, like, here is the main difference? Or first of all, if you have INAV 3.0 on a plane and you're happy with it, is there really anything there, if you don't see something that jumps out at you, that would make people want to think about flashing the INAV 4.0?
Well, yeah. There's a couple of nice things. There's not really so many big changes apart from if you're a waypoint mission guy. There's loads of stuff been added for waypoints. That's one of my really weak points. I don't really fly waypoint missions, but there's an absolute ton of stuff for waypoints. But also there's just some things in the configurator that make things easier to use. Like there's the units conversion on the advanced tuning page, and the modes page is a lot easier to understand now. So when you flick a switch, you actually get some feedback. There's an indicator so you know when acro mode is active. So there's just some nicer, easier to use functionality in there as well. But yeah, there are plenty of things that could make people switch over.
So, Mark, one of the things I was wondering about is, I was putting the slideshow together, I started looking through all of the different versions of INAV that we've come up with, all the stable releases. Since December 18th of 2018, which was 3 years ago yesterday, we've had 32 different stable releases come out, and 16 of them came out in 2019. I mean, there were just a lot of 2.1, 2.2, 2.2.1. It was 2.2.1, 2.2.2, and 2.2.3 within 3 days of each other. So what it appears to me is that there were a lot of like minor changes that were constantly happening, and then they switched it over to about twice a year. But thanks to COVID, a lot of the programmers were at home, and we all got together and came up with some really neat ideas as far as some of the things that, like what Andrew Newton had a problem with his plane, got us to rethink about how we address PIDs rates in the group. And so INAV 3.0 was the big one, but it was what we're seeing right now with INAV 4.0. Is this really? It's more like a 0.1 upgrade, right? It's kind of like what we'll be seeing more in the future, which are continuous minor changes.
Yeah, I think as far as I understand that, the naming change or the naming scheme was just changed for the versioning. So everything that breaks compatibility with the older configurator, for example, or with the old configuration, if you transfer something over, this means it's a major upgrade in the future. So Darren wrote a great article on the inavfixturingroup.com website, so look at that too if you want to have more detailed information about the update. And the major thing that was changed was the OSD item list, the character list. And because that was not compatible between both anymore, and you have to reload your OSD font after the upgrade to 4.0, that was the reason why the major version bump was done. And I think there are also 2 or 3 things in the configuration of INAV where the naming has changed or the items were removed. And this, if you transfer a complete diff or complete dump from 3.0 to 4.0, this also gives you errors because there are some incompatibilities in the configuration. So these are all reasons why there's now a 4.0, and future smaller upgrades, like with a new added feature that does not break compatibility, could be or will be 4.1, and bug fixes will be 4.1.1, for example. Yeah, Darren?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's a real reason why it's really important now that people use the same configurator version as the firmware version. In the past, you were supposed to anyway, but people sort of got away with not. But it's now really important that you stick with the same configurator and firmware. And Mark mentioned the fonts. There was actually an issue posted in GitHub for INAV 3.0.2 saying the fonts are all messed up, and it's because they installed the fonts from 4.0 configurator. So it's just really important that you just stick with the same versions for both parts of INAV now.
One of the things I also want to address was the notion that when should you upgrade your versions of INAV? If you're happy with INAV 3.0, for example, and it's flying great, there's really no reason, if you don't see anything that jumps out at you, such as the waypoint missions or one of the other things that we listed, to jump into INAV 4.0. But one thing I was thinking is that if you're running INAV, anything lower than INAV 2.6 right now, you really should think about upgrading to INAV 4.0. But Mark's point was that if you're flying something that's like a little park flyer, a little ripper, and you're happy with INAV 2.21 or whatever it is you're flying with, and it works for you, might as well stick with it. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you have a plane where you don't rely on navigation stuff and position hold, return to home, of course, should still work. But it worked in the past too, just to get the plane back close to you and circle above you. So if your plane flies and you are not interested in all the new features and the new auto tune, for example, and you are totally happy, I think there's no reason to there's no reason to upgrade, actually. So just stick with it if you like your plane how it is. If you just want to try it, there are some changes that change the flight behavior even on the same pits. I think something in the I forgot the name. This new rate system, Darren, maybe you can help me out here, that was ported from Emu Flight. I'm not sure if that is also active on wings, but for copters, for example, this is really helpful to get a more smooth stick feeling.
Yes, control something or other, isn't it?
Yeah, I forgot.
Pavel did it.
Yeah,
We'll put in the show notes.
I have to ask Pavel if this also applies for planes, actually. But yeah, basically, if you are happy, then stick with what you have. If you think it can be better, then you should really upgrade. Start with the default pits, not with the default firmware pits. That's really, really important. Do not use the reset pits button on fixed rings in the INAV configurator, because this will set the pits back to firmware defaults and not to the wing preset. I will make a separate video on this, and I think we will also add that to the website, how you actually can reset your pit configuration in 4.0 to get the right default loaded. This is a really important thing, because if you load the default pits, these will be pits for multi-rotors, and of course also rates for multi-rotors. And I don't think that any plane I know of has 200 degrees pitch rate. It's very likely that the plane freaks out after that.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's good to know. All right, so there you have it. If INAV 4.0 is out, I've ran it on a couple planes. I've been running the release candidates on a couple planes, and it's been flying great. I put one fresh today, ran the default, took it out for a flight. It's a plane that never really flew well before. Flew great, so I'm very happy with it. INAV is just it continues to get better and better, so fantastic. We're going to get into the guests now. So let's get to the guy we have not seen in a while. The last time we saw him was a year ago. I think it was this time last year, as a matter of fact, for our Christmas show, our anniversary show, as we call it. Adam, how are you doing today, babes?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me back. And yeah, it was exactly a year ago. So this just seems to be my slot, doesn't it? The Christmas one.
That's a regular guest now on the anniversary.
You're like a younger Saint Nick without the grey beard.
I'm the one Brit as well that doesn't actually live in Britain at the moment. So I live in Ireland. So.
Yeah, but you are originally British, right?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm from Birmingham originally.
And last time we spoke, you mentioned that you had an American wife, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because we didn't talk about it in the show, but afterwards you mentioned it was like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. That was something like,
yeah,
you know, that freaks out people. I'm from the United States. I mean, we live off that stuff. I mean, after coming back from a bike ride, I'm hungry after about an hour. I crave peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. But it absolutely makes people sick in the UK and other parts in Germany and other parts of the world. But that's just very much an American thing. And so that was probably one of the things you had to get used to with a wife who's like, we grew up with this stuff. I mean, we had lunches every day, and our school lunches were this stuff. So,
yeah, I'm not going to lie. I did think it sounded pretty nasty. And my wife started making it for the kids, and I'd be thinking, oh, God, what are they eating? And then, you know, one day I think I just picked it up not knowing what it was, and I tried it because I was hungry, and I thought, oh, this actually tastes pretty good. I didn't want to admit it at first, but, you know, I had to eventually because I kept pinching it. So, yeah, I'll give you that one.
Yeah, I'm still looking for the cola beer. So that one, supposedly you have to get the right combination. I had to go get an actual cola beer. So Mark, say something. He's holding it up.
What is that?
This is
cola
mixery.
and beer together. It's a German thing. So that was
60% beer and 40% Coke. That's what I usually drink in the evening when I want to have a beer.
That's like a normal thing in Germany, is it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Or Radler, Radler, how we call it, with beer and lemon. Yeah.
So it's like. Yeah, so that's like our thing is peanut butter and jelly. Germans have cola beer. Was it Norwegians with the Ludfisk? Which is I've heard about it, never tried that before. But the British, you guys have the famous for ales and bangers and mash and some other things.
That sounds like from an American perspective, I'd say.
What was that blood pudding? That it was blood that from the cow. You make a pudding out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have that here, so it's just kind of like.
We don't really have that here either. I think it's.
It just kind of turns up on breakfast plates and then everyone leaves it. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, anyway, so in the last year. You've been taking on some new planes. So which ones have you tried over the last year?
Yeah, it was kind of it's been a bit of a weird year, really. I started the year with the AR Pro and kind of crashed that on its maiden. And then I had the Drak, which flew really well on the maiden, and then I crashed that the next day. And then the next plane was the Spitfire, and yeah, that didn't have a very good maiden either. The canopy fell off, basically. I've got a video that's about to come out in the next couple of days on that. And that ended up in nearly a crash as well. So yeah, it was a bit of a weird start to the year because I'm not really used to crashing things, and that was all I was doing at the start of the year. So yeah, the AR Pro, the Drak, and the Spitfire were the main ones this year for me.
So AR Pro, what are your thoughts on the AR Pro?
Yeah, I really liked it, and I can see why it's such a popular wing. And it was actually that video that I did on the AR Pro. It was my most popular video of the whole year, which kind of shows you that it really is a much liked wing out there.
Wasn't that wasn't that the auto launch failure where it stayed in idle throttle and threw a picture? I remember that.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was one of those moments where it was a strange day. I got so much new gear. It was not just the AR Pro. I was using Crossfire for the first time. I was using a different transmitter for the first time, and yeah, I chucked it, and nothing was responding. And yeah, it was all just because it didn't detect that throw. And it ended up kind of doing a bit of a circle, and then
Go ahead.
I got it to fail safe, and yeah, it just ended up in a tree.
Oh, geez.
It actually survived really well, to be fair to it. It survived a lot better than I thought, because when I saw it go in on the goggles, I just thought, yeah, that's going in the bin. But no, it was actually, it did pretty well. And I did enjoy flying it, but for me, I tend to try and limit my model collection. And if I've got something else that does something similar and maybe better, then I'll kind of move it on. And for me, as you probably know from the previous show, my ZCon just, for me, is just the ultimate wing, the ultimate Delta wing, and it just does it all. So yeah, for me, the AR Pro didn't really get too much use because the ZCon was always my favorite. So I moved that one on.
Yeah, something about brand new foam also, when you look at it, you get to the field and there's sunlights on it and the foam is shining and you're about to take off and you're like, this isn't going to go well. But, you know. Yeah. But so you got rid of that plane. I don't know, the Air Pro, it had a lot of enthusiasm behind it. But it seems like to be like the plane that people have kind of forgotten about as the year goes on. It was the most popular plane of 2021, but it had just come out. So I wonder how it would fare now, you know, now that people have had a year to play with it.
I think it will still carry on being popular because it's just such an easy plane to just pick up and go with. Some people probably disagree, but I think it's a pretty good first wing. A lot of people would say the AR900 may be better, but I think the AR Pro is actually quite a decent first wing. Just so easy to put together, and it's just all designed with FPV in mind. So it's really, you know, you don't have to go dig out foam, and there's no kind of putting spars in and cutting and gluing. It's just really easy to get going pretty quickly without too much hassle.
What do you think, Mark?
It flies well. It flies well. It does.
Mark has the Air Pro as well, so he was big on it. Are you still flying that plane?
Yeah, I'm still flying it. I have to do some repairs because after the crash landing when I visited a friend 2 months ago, yeah, I had a pretty hard crash, and I found that the ailerons are both cracked. And I fixed it temporary with Gorilla Glue, I think, because with Gorilla Glue you can get a pretty much flexible hinge, but that came loose again, so I have to find these nylon hinges and to replace them. But I think what I will do at the end is I will just get a completely new fuselage, just the kit, and transplant everything over. But I will definitely keep it because I really love the plane. Perfect.
Would love to hear that. Okay, so it's a good plane, you like it, but Adam, but you don't really, it didn't like your was it the ZCon or you had was a better choice for you. So what was the next plane that you had besides the Spitfire?
The next one that I had,
the Drak, that's the full-size Drak.
It's the full-size Drak, and it's actually my second one. So I used to have one a while back, and I had the right wing motor on it, and it just kept getting smoked, and I don't know why. And Chris couldn't work it out. I hadn't done anything weird, and then it got to the point where I hadn't really got any good places to fly it, so I sold it on. And then, yeah, a year or so on, I thought I saw them about again. They caught my eye, and I thought I just got to have another one and give it another go. There seem to be better options out there for motors these days with the Badass range and with the KO motors on the market now. And yeah, they've made it a lot more enjoyable to fly. So I've really enjoyed that one. I started off with a fairly basic setup, and then I tried the KO motor on that last flight, which was, as I said, it was pulling 208 amps on launch, and I saw a top speed of 263 kilometers an hour, or 163 miles an hour. And that was just on the first flight. So I expect I will get better speed out of that when I get some better lipos in it, to be honest with you, because I think the lipos I'm using were struggling with those kind of amps. But
that plane is, I've not seen one in person until I went over to Drones and Hobbies before they closed down, and they had ones, well, they closed down their retail store. They still are in business, but they had one sitting there. And I mean, you cannot possibly explain to people how big this thing is.
Yeah, I feel like it's quite an intimidating wing. Trying launching these things. I mean, some people think it's really easy. For me, I've always hated launching the Drak. It's an awkward shape, and it's big and scary.
It's big and scary. It has a huge motor in the back of it, and it's just a huge wing. You have to launch with both hands.
Yeah, big 12.
So you have to do an auto launch or have someone help you launch it, right?
Yeah, I auto launch mine by myself. I'm sure most people have seen my incident where I, on my second day of flying it, I decided to auto launch it and then turn around and kick the transmitter across the floor. That didn't end too well. So the Drak was it was an absolute mess. It amazes me now when I look back at the pictures of what it looked like after that crash and what it looks like now, because you can hardly tell now.
What's the all-up weight in that plane, the full-size Drak?
Sorry, say that again?
The all-up weight, how much does it weigh?
It's, if you do kilograms, it's around 4.3 kilograms.
Jeez, that's almost like 10 pounds.
Which is, yeah, it's quite a lot. To be throwing that thing, I just find it awkward to hold and throw, so it's not, yeah, it's a bit scary because of weight. It obviously, because it's got so much power, the second the throttle kicks in, it does go really weightless. But when you stood there holding it without the prop spinning, you're thinking, oh, I can't believe I've got to try and throw this thing. Yeah.
But I think that's a big cliff, and you throw it over, and you hopefully you get started, right?
Yeah. But I think make it look easy, and he does it in manual with his big hands. He just sticks it up in the air, off it goes. But
I think that's the point on these planes, especially on the Draks. You really need a thrust to weight ratio greater than 1 just to launch it. It will be impossible to launch otherwise, because if you have a lower thrust to weight ratio, you have to throw it flat, but then it won't build up enough speed in time to stay airborne. So that's the only way to go.
Yeah, it's been a funny one for me as well, because I've not really had it running reliably for a long period of time yet. I've been changing setups. I had an issue with the ESC, the Badass ESCs, where if you throttle down to 0 and then you go back up, but you do it quite quickly, it actually cuts the throttle. You lose the throttle until you go back down to 0 and back up again. But I didn't know this was how to fix it the first few times. So I'm flying along, and if I touched 0 throttle for a moment and went back up, that would be it. There would be no throttle. So I ended up having to glide it and ditch it in a field somewhere. And it turned out when I contacted Badass that is actually, they could replicate it. So all of them do it. But it's a strange one, because obviously not many people have come across it. But for some reason in my flying style, I have. And I think the first time it happened was when I was trying to fly formation. And you know, when you're flying formation, sometimes you're kind of adjusting the throttle quite a lot, trying to get it right to stay right behind someone. And if you just touch 0 for a second when you're just trying to back off, yeah, I was losing the motor.
Jeez. So that's why you need 200 amps to take off, because and I was just mentioning that 200 amps is pretty much what we have on our panels for our houses, but you know, but we're running 110 or 220 depending where you live. Man, that's a killer plane. And the Spitfire you mentioned, so that's a scale plane.
Yeah, that's a 1200 mil wingspan. It's just the Dynam one. And the Spitfire's always been one of my favourite planes. I'm sure many British people probably say the same thing. But I've always wanted
Here
to.
too.
I actually learned to fly with a Spitfire, three channel Spitfire, like a park flyer. And I've always fancied doing an FPV conversion on one. I don't know why it's taken me so long to get around to doing it. But yeah, I finally did it, and it's actually been really good fun. I was actually flying it a couple of days ago, and in the mountains, and it really is good fun to fly. Being in the cockpit and the head tracking, it's just it's a fun experience.
That's amazing. So, how long? What kind of flight times are you getting out of that?
About 20 minutes, 25 minutes.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
But that's with a LiPo. It's 5 amp hour LiPo 4S. That's about right for me. I'm not one of these people that likes to be up in the air for too long anyway. I don't do cruise throttle, so I'd probably get a bit longer if I really wanted to. I just like to get around places a bit quicker.
So the LiPo is industry. The LiPo is industry standard, how Matt would say it.
But yeah, I've actually got a video on that. I've just put a video together on the build of that Spitfire and the flying in the mountains, and yeah, I'll post that on the next few days.
So you like moving around more than casual FPV, relaxed FPV. You were like moving around. As Mark was saying, you like flying 5 miles away and about 5 feet off the ground.
Yeah, my favorite kind of flying is just being close to the ground, really. I don't really do much high altitude stuff. And if you can find a decent landscape with a bit of mountain, and if you've seen my channel, I was trying to find a good river to follow. I don't know, there's just something about it that I find a lot of fun. And the Mini Talon video was my last one. We're really trying to push it to the limit, really. And that was, I'm not going to lie, it was pretty scary at times. I thought I was going to lose it. But I went into it being prepared that I would lose my Mini Talon. So the fact that I didn't this year is kind of a bit of a surprise and a bonus.
Okay, so Mini Talon. So yeah, I was going to ask you about that because there's a couple different Mini Talons out there. So there's the new the Mini Talon Pro that you just got.
Right, I would refer to the Mini Talon. That's the kind of standard one, and then the new version is the Talon Pro, which I've got it. It's actually, you can see it just up here hanging on the wall.
Okay, so you've had both planes. What do you think of both of them?
The Mini Talon I really liked. I think that my build on it wasn't the best. I made it a bit heavy. I used some thick laminate and I painted the whole thing. It looked pretty cool, but it ended up being quite a heavy build. So yeah, mine probably didn't fly quite as well as maybe some of them out there. But I enjoyed flying it, and it just got to the point where it just got a bit rough and battered over time. So I converted that into what I would call my high-risk plane. So I kind of put the cheaper flight controller in it, and basically all the parts in it that I wouldn't be upset about if they ended up in a river or, smashed up, basically.
So that's a plane that the Mini Talon, the original Mini Talon, not the Pro, Talon Pro, but the Mini Talon is like a $60 plane, and it is one of those planes that if you buy the kit, they put a motor on it. It's just way too heavy for the plane, and so it makes you end up. A lot of people overbuild that plane. They put too much stuff on it. And there's one guy who's in Las Vegas who's like the king of that plane as far as he's flying with autopilot now, and he's turned it over to a VTOL plane. But it's just like he has on his page, he has tons and tons of 3D printed parts you could download.
Mark V, is it something like that?
Mark V, yeah.
I've got some of his parts. I had some of the parts that he designed on my Mini Talon as well. I think everyone who's had a Mini Talon probably knows of that guy, because if you're searching for parts for it to 3D print, you'd have come across him. Yeah. But like as you say, it's probably one of the cheaper airframes out there.
Right.
I think everyone just thinks it's just a great all-rounder, which is why so many people have got one or had one or plan to have one.
The way I'm with Darren. We have them in boxes. Darren's actually started to build his, but it seems like I've seen one. Rich Adams has one. I looked at it, and the fuselage looks so small in it. It's just so cramped that it's. I know we're in the era now where we have micro flight controllers and everything else like that. But I'm looking at it, and I hear it's just an amazing plane to fly. But it's just maybe a lot of people do a long range FPV with it. I guess is because it is cheap, and you can throw cheap gear in there, and you can have fun with it and fly it like you stole it, type of thing. And
they do fly well, so it's just a win-win, really.
Yeah.
Electronics that go in it, you can get small motors that don't cost a lot of money, and it'll run really well. because it is so cheap, that's why I was willing to, use it as a high risk model, because, well, if I smash it up and I really like it, I can just get another one for next to nothing. Although it does seem like they're a bit rare at the moment. I've not seen them for sale anywhere. And if they are for sale, they're quite expensive at the moment. So I don't know if they're struggling with stock or if they're stopping making them. I don't know if anyone knows.
I got mine a few months ago when they had a sale. I think I pinched the last one. It was like 30 quid. That's what I got. I got one in a box and I'm building one now. So, but yeah, what I've seen of them, they're great planes. My first FPV flight was in a Mini Talon. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
You must have a really big build bench there, Darren, because I think you're building one of every aircraft I know of.
Well, this is my build bench. It's tiny. But yeah, I just have it all littered over the other side of the room, sort of balanced on top of each other.
Yeah.
Darren has enough time to build in the evenings, but not enough time really to fly on the weekends, unfortunately. And I guess the weather doesn't really cooperate this time of year in the UK that much.
You get the odd days, don't you? It's been pretty nice the last few days in Ireland, and I'm pretty sure the UK gets almost identical weather to me over here in Ireland. So
yeah, it was probably flyable today, but I just didn't have the time today.
Yeah, I was out today. It was we were kind of fighting, trying to find spots where it wasn't foggy, but yeah, it was good. But yeah, with the Mini Talon as well. Anyway, I did end up wrecking that. And I had a Talon Pro sat in a box in my attic for quite a while, actually, because I just thought, when I do wreck the Mini Talon, because that will happen, I just transplanted all the electronics straight into the Talon Pro. So I just moved everything over. I didn't do anything fancy. I used a different FPV camera, but apart from that, it was all the same.
Okay, so the Talon Pro, my gripe number one is that you have a Mini Talon, which is a $60 plane. And then you have the Talon Pro, which is a $159 to $169 plane.
Yeah, that's kind of weird, because I'm pretty sure I got mine for somewhere between $80 and $100.
Yeah.
But I have had mine.
Was that the kit, or was that the actual with motor and everything?
Just the kit.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a bit more expensive. But yeah, I grabbed one a little while back, just thinking I'll give it a go when my Mini Talon dies. And yeah, and built that over a few days recently and got it made a few days ago.
Okay,
cool. The thing that shocked me was the size of that thing, because Adam posted a picture up where he had, I can't remember what else it was. It was the Mini Crosswind, the Talon Pro, and something else. And I was looking at that picture thinking, yeah, the Albert, that was it. But I was looking at the picture thinking, the Crosswind looks weird. It shouldn't have a V-tail. So I thought that the Talon Pro is so big. I thought it was the Crosswind. Yeah,
I feel like that picture was a bit of an optical illusion in a way. It didn't look like it represented the actual size, but the Talon Pro, obviously, it is a bit bigger. Annoyingly for me personally, because my Mini Talon fit in the boot of my car in one piece, and the Talon Pro is probably about 2 centimeters too long in wingspan to fit in my boot now, so that's a little bit annoying. But yeah, it is a bit bigger. I think it's a 1400 mil wingspan, and the Mini Talon was a 1300.
That's a good wing size, 1400 millimeter.
Yeah, nice size. It's the fuselage is
huge.
They might actually be the same length wings, to be honest with you, as the Mini Talon, but it's because the fuselage is so wide in comparison to the Mini Talon that it gives it that extra wingspan.
Yeah. That looks like it's wonderful for putting your gear in there. You can put a ton of
yeah. I put 14,000, and that was a 4S 4P, and it's just rattling around in there. Whereas, and that's two lithium-ion packs next to each other in parallel. Whereas in my Mini Talon, I could just fit the one of them in, and this one fits two with just tons of space around it. And then there's the extra bay at the back for all the electronics, and that is. That's huge as well. There's just so much space to work with inside it compared to the Mini Talon. I was quite shocked actually at the difference.
Yeah, the Mini Talon, in my opinion, is a complete disaster in case of room you have to build on. I mean, it's a huge plane, but if you put electronics or just if you put a battery in there, it feels I have to squeeze a battery in like on my drift with a fuselage that wide, because the opening is so small and the fuselage is so deep. You have to. I have really trouble to get the Velcro around the battery. It's really hard to do because it's so narrow in the opening and so deep down where the battery sits.
I think that's one of the problems, is the access to it and well inside. The access is just pretty difficult. I've seen people that have actually cut the front open and made the canopy open up so that they can put their batteries in there, but there's some of these people that are loading it up with lithium ion and flying it 300 kilometers in one flight.
Yeah, there's something that you brought up as far as it's being cheap enough so that you can fly it and you can take risks with it and things like that. So what kind of gear do you have in there?
I had Maytech F405 wing flight controller, one of the old ones that I just put in, I had lying around, which is a used one. I've got one of the BN220 GPS. And then what I did was I took my DJI Osmo Action camera off it and I put the Runcam 2 in and put an aero nose on it, just a 3D printed Mark QV thing. And then I think I just used an older FPV camera that I had lying around, one of the Fox ears. And an old Partum VTX. I don't really use the Partum VTXs much anymore. I've switched over to the Maytech ones. I prefer them.
Well, that's one of the things I was thinking of. You also brought up DJI. So when you have, what is a DJI with the VTX and the camera? It's about $150.
Yeah. I think they're maybe a bit more than that even.
Right. So the problem that you're one of the few guys I actually heard who actually built an analog plane after building a DJI plane.
Yeah. I actually, to be honest with you, I haven't properly built a DJI plane yet. So I did buy the DJI goggles earlier on in the year, and I got them with one air unit. And what I did was I temporarily bolted on the air unit to my Mini Talon. And I took it out on the Mini Talon a few times around my usual flying spot, and I kind of enjoyed it. But I really need to put it on a plane and give it a proper chance, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's not going to replace analog for me, that's for sure. I'll say that straight away.
Just to clarify things, Steve, Adam was talking about DJI Osmo Action Cam, not DJI FPV system.
Okay, the FPV system. But it does bring up the point, which was, I think we'll get at this in the second hour, which is analog versus digital. I want to have Rory in on the conversation as well on it. My personal belief is that I don't want to find ways to make my planes more expensive. They're already expensive enough. So, but anyway, that sounds great. And the one other thing you mentioned was the fun jet. And of course, I can bring up the fun jet as soon as Luke walks out of the room, because Luke loves to take. He's coming back. Here he comes.
He heard the word fun jet.
Sorry, I missed that. I did hear fun jet. So
yeah, okay. And also Luke and fun jet together. So you built yourself a mild little 6S fun jet for this year?
No, it's actually I've just been collecting all the parts, and I had trouble getting the servos. They kept getting lost in the post, so I finally got all the parts to build it. So it's just waiting here on my bench.
Is that going to be FPV, or is that just line of sight?
Yes, it's going to be FPV, and it's going to be analog, and it's going to be 5.8, which is something I don't do very often, just because of component size really on such a small plane. Because I want it to be nice and quick, and I want it to be quite aero. I'm burying the 5.8 antenna in the wing. There's not really, with 1.2, you can't really put it on that plane without causing drag. So yeah, I'm going to be making sure everything's really sleek and buried in it. But yeah, it's going to be a success. It's not going to be anything major. It's not going to be competing with Rupert White or anything like that. But he's been helping me with the setup, and it's one of his favourite reliable. So
I don't know much about the fun jet, other than I think the only existence for that is to see how fast you can make that thing fly.
I think a lot of people out there do actually quite enjoy flying them for long range and just kind of flying around slowly, to be honest with you. I say slowly, just not going around at 200 miles an hour all the time. But yeah, some people build them for speed. Some people build them for cruising around.
Yeah. So Luke, what was the fastest fun jet you put together?
The fast one I put together went 260 miles an hour. But that's nothing compared to what Rupert White has done with his. So, yeah, not even really worthy of an honourable mention, to be honest. But yeah, I've got one. Actually, no, it's not worth getting down. It's quite a few other planes, but that's just set. I've got another one that's set up with just a 2205 mini quad motor, like one of the old ones, and that's just for doing slow speed aerobatics. It only weighs about 500 grams. Perfect for that kind of thing. So it's quite a versatile plane.
Fantastic. And Darren, have you ever played with it? Because I know Darren likes the burnout motors. That's his favorite thing in the world. Have you ever put a fun jet together? Is there one sitting up there somewhere in the rafters?
There is one sat up on my shelf, which I've got a motor for. It's going to be very mild, though. It's only a 4S. There was another Henrik. I can't remember his surname, but he had the world sort of GPS record for a little while. Took it from Rupert. With his fun jet, and it's basically, I'm going to mimic one of his earlier setups where he just had it on 4S, but that was still getting close to 200 miles an hour. So they are brilliant planes. I can't wait to have a go. But yeah, Luke's I've not actually seen fly yet. They always seem to have a impactful launch.
You've seen it fly once? You saw it fly once?
I haven't. I've only in a video.
Were you not there when it did a couple passes?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, your video went out, didn't it? So you have
video went out while I was flying it. Yeah, then it reached, I think, 210 miles an hour. Yeah, not too terrible.
No.
Before it hit the ground.
I know that one was fine. It was usually failed launches.
yeah. So that flight was fine, landed safe. Then I did 3 failed launches.
Adam, you guys say something.
Yeah, say something.
No, I was going to say, this is actually the motor that Henrik was using when he got that world record of around 440. Wow. This is one of the motors that I've got for my fun jet, but I'm not going to run this one to start with. I'm going to run the other one that Rupert recommends as a really good all-rounder. It's going to be super fast and you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of it. He thinks this one basically puts too much stress on all of the components and you'll get one fast pass. And you've got a good chance of breaking things after a short while. So maybe on a rainy day, this might come out if I get bored of the original motor. But yeah,
my fun jet is still stored in the kitchen at the moment because I have no room here and no time yet to build it.
Okay, since we're asking everybody, Rory, have you put a fun jet together?
No, I haven't actually. I've never had one.
Okay. Yeah. Are you not into speed?
Yeah, I guess so. It's just never a plane that I've happened upon. Never had a chance to order one or thought, yeah, I want a fun jet.
Yeah. It's like they have like the real fun jets, those were the German ones, I guess, and then they have the Chinese knockoffs of that plane.
Yeah, I think this was it. There's a couple of versions of copy one. Didn't Hobby King do a version as well?
Yeah, there's the originals are multiplex, and there's about 3 different versions of there's Funjet Ultra, Funjet Ultra 2, and then Hobby King brought out, I can't remember what theirs was called, but it was a copy of the original. But yeah, that was quite a hot setup for a Hobby King plane from out of the box.
Yeah, the Ultra 2 is the one I have. Got that from Germany. They're about €80 delivered, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Well, yeah, probably more here in the States. So when we spoke last year, Adam, you were really hot and heavy on the Albabird.
Oh.
And you just crashed it and you should bought a new one now?
No, I this is my first Albabird. I haven't
built your first
yet.
one?
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
of Josh.
Yeah.
Yes, Josh. I think Josh has crashed quite a few of them, and he loves it. Obviously, just keeps buying them again and again.
God. Okay, so what do you think of the Albabird?
So far, I don't know. I just hear so many people say it's such a great little plane that I just decided to give it a go. I'm putting, as I said, I'm putting DJI on it. It's going to be my first proper HD build for DJI.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I'm going to give the DJI system a proper chance using that plane. But I'm also I'm designing this as kind of like a setup that'll be really portable. so that I could take it on holiday. So the Albabird, you can get an optional bit of kit that allows the fuselage to kind of break apart in half.
Yeah.
And then it comes with connectors on the wings, like the mini crosswind. So the wings can come off, the fuselage comes in half. And then with the DJI goggles and no ground station, it'd just be an ideal plane to be able to take away on holiday to somewhere like Spain if you get the chance. So yeah, that's the plan for that one. And yeah, I'm expecting good things from it because everybody loves it, and I'd be very surprised if I didn't like it.
The reason I brought up since a year ago, what has changed is there have been about 3 or 4 different versions of this plane have come out. So you've got the Dragon 2, which the Dragon was a twin already, but the 2 is they switch it over to a traditional tail or a V tail in the same box. So you have your choice of different tails. And then you had something, the Killer Whale, which was also kind of like, that was more set up for like having a GoPro on the front. It has a square front to the plane. And it came out, and that was just from Adam RC. So a lot of people really loved the whole idea of the Dolphin, and they were kind of expecting the Killer Whale to be something as fun as the Dolphin, and didn't really sell well. Then they put it on sale, and everyone bought it recently. So it's had kind of like a second life, and a lot of people really tend to like that plane a lot now. Not quite as popular as the Dolphin, though. So you had all these different options available to you. Why did you select the Albabird?
I think I went for the Albabird just because so many people had said such good things about it. It's one of the models I've heard people raving the most about. So I thought I've just got to give it a try and see what all the hype is about, really. Yeah, there was the Dragon. I was close to getting one of those at one point. And yeah, I just decided to go with the Alba just because it had such great reviews from people. And yeah, Josh was always at me saying, yeah, you've got to get one of these. Got to get one of these Albabirds. So yeah.
That's because he wanted to do a group buy, wasn't it, though?
No, I actually did do. I bought a couple while I was at it because a friend here that I'm flying with, he wanted one as well. So we got a slight discount. Although it was still because these things you can only get them from the supplier in China, and they charged us, I think it was $90 just for shipping for 2 of them, and it took exactly 2 months to arrive, which is just madness.
Perfect. Well, we have another guest here today as well, and so I'm going to give Adam a chance to get finished up his first beer. So this was originally supposed to be the drinking and loitering show, but people got sick and people got overworked and stuff like that, and I can't have people falling asleep in the show. So here to pick up the energy even more is Rory G. Rory, you've been on, God, about 8 months ago? Welcome back.
Yeah, it was a little while ago. I don't know if it was that long, was it?
Maybe 6 months ago, something
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's nice to be back anyway.
Fantastic. So what have you been up to in the second half of the year? You had the whole summer to get out and flying, and
Yeah, went out and got some really good flights in. Picked up the HDZero system, been playing around with that, new cameras, all that kind of thing. Building that monster behind me. All that.
Are you still working on that? You were like showing that.
Oh man, that's going to take forever. That thing it's just immense. It's
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think on the last Ring Talk when you attended, then there was just a skeleton basically, and at least there is some progress visible.
Yeah, you can kind of see it's got wheels on it now, and kind of on its own kind of feet, as it were, and engine cowling and all this kind of stuff, and the tilt decks on the back and things like that, and the tails on, well, mostly. Some wings are built. I need to do 2 more wings for that. So yeah, it's a long road yet.
So you mentioned the word OpenHD, and so I wanted to have you be like the spokesman. Last time you were here, you were kind of like the spokesman for FR Sky. And yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later because you got some new FR Sky toys.
Yeah, I love that stuff, man. It's good stuff.
Yeah, but OpenHD. So we were watching.
HDZero, you mean?
Huh?
HDZero.
Zero HD. I'm sorry. Zero HD. We had Powell was talking on his INAV 4.0 release yesterday, and I was out flying. I came back and caught the last half of it, and so he starts talking about about a year ago, or probably sometime during the year, he switched over to the DJI. And he said his comments were, and Mark was there. I don't think Darren was there, but Mark was there. He can catch me if I'm wrong. But basically his comments were that shark bite is not really going to work out. And he had his reasons for why it's not going to work out. And then he said that the Open HD, he said like they came out with a new camera and it sold out so quickly, and they're not making enough of it. No one wants to invest in it. This is not really serious. Nobody wants to put a Raspberry Pi together. So the only thing that's real that's going to be around for long term is going to be DJI. So that kind of paraphrased what he said. Mark, did I get that right?
Yes and no, but we are still talking about HDZero. Was just mixed up a little bit. Yeah, Darren just made
HDZero. Okay, I got
HDZero. Yeah. So
HDZero.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
HDZero.
So I can just put some electronics in the camera to show it. It's laying on my desk here for 2 months now and still not installed into the plane because the plane is not finished yet. And but yeah, they made a agreement with Runcam, as far as I understand it, and Runcam should produce some of the new cameras. Runcam said, no, we will do it, but we don't think that we will sell a lot of them, so we will only make a first batch of 1,000 cameras in total. That's also split, and every time they released a new sub batch, basically they were sold out in minutes or even seconds. So yeah, it seems to be a little bit more interest in the community than they initially thought, and I think this I would say marketing trick where they basically gave the receiver modules away for €100 or $100. This really hit the market, and a lot of people got one, me too. So I just got one, and then maybe in the future I will set up a plane with that, just to have it for a low price. And I think a lot of people have it now, started to use it. The new cameras came out. Fox here has some great cameras. Runcam now also has some, if you can get them. And it got a lot of attention and a lot of traction now.
So let's start from scratch here, because obviously I'm still learning the word HDZero. The only reason I know about it is we have one guy in the group who wanted to post 3 videos a week about HDZeros, and we had to tell him, like, listen, kind of tap it down a little bit. I mean, people want to hear about it, but not so much.
He was posting OpenHD.
OpenHD.
That was OpenHD. That's a different story.
That's why I'm getting all confused. There's HDZero and OpenHD. Okay.
Yeah, so OpenHD is the stuff with the Raspberry Pi and the webcam and a Wi-Fi module that gets modified to output more power and all that stuff. So, and the Linux system, and yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm getting confused at. Okay, that's OpenHD. I mean, I'm thinking like, I'm hearing about the Raspberry Pi, and that's what Paul was talking about, was that, right?
He talked about both in his stream, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So OpenHD is it's an interesting project. It's a DIY kind of thing, and so we're not really going to talk too much about it other than it's out there and it's still growing. Is it viable right now, do you think?
I mean,
you have a Raspberry Pi?
From my point of view, it is interesting, as you say. The video quality, if you have a proper camera on it, is really fantastic. You have basically no range limits because it's also a one-direction connection, as far as I understand that. The problem really is the needed hardware setup. You need a Raspberry Pi on the plane. You need a Raspberry Pi on the ground. You need these Wi-Fi modules for the data transmission. You need a dedicated camera. You usually use a standard webcam for that, or a Raspberry camera. I think there are Raspberry cameras with really good image quality, actually. And this is all a lot of hardware you have to put together. Then there is Linux running on it that has to be booted up every time you want to use it. Like you change the battery, and then it takes like half a minute or so until the system is booted, and you get an actual image. And the latency is too high. The latency is just, for long range stuff, it's fine. If you have a big plane and you're cruising like really in 3D cruise mode or so, and you fly long range, it's totally fine. But like for quads or for planes ripping around and seeing small branches, when you want to go through gaps, it's unusable at this stage. There were some things in, I think, beginning of 2021, where one of the developers posted, I think, was it a crowdfunding thing or so? And they wanted to collect money to develop a dedicated VTX board that does all the stuff in one single board. But yeah, we never heard of that again. At least I didn't.
So you need to have, which Raspberry Pis are we talking about? Are you talking about the full-size one or the Zeros?
For the ground, it doesn't matter really. You can use the full-size one to have a little bit more connection and a little bit more processing power on the downstream. For the flight unit, you can use the Zero, but I think it has to be a Raspberry Pi 3 or so. But the Zero one, the very small, slim one, that works.
Yeah, okay. Got it. All right, perfect. All right, so that's kind of work in progress, and we're going to figure out how it goes in the future. What about okay? So we're done talking about that then, and so what you're talking about is HDZero, HD, not Zero HD or yeah, Open HD, HDZero. So what? Now, what is this? This is something completely different, right? This is
it's completely different. Yeah, it's low latency, completely the opposite to OpenHD and the kind of DJI as well. It's kind of designed to replace analog VTXs in the transmission system. There, it's not designed to go up against DJI, as everyone goes, DJI and HDZero, yeah. They're not even the same sort of thing, really. They're trying to close the gap, but it's two different approaches to the same thing.
So what's different about this as far as the approach? I mean, obviously it's more open source than, or at least a little bit more open than the DJI.
Yeah. I mean, the parent company is kind of like DiviMath, and it's the HDZero, which is the brand, and the chips are made by DiviMath, and they can be purchased and incorporated into sort of third parties hardware. So if anybody else wanted to make a HDZero kind of style VTX, they could buy the chips and the license and develop and market it themselves. So you could have 3 or 4 different brands on the same sort of hardware.
Okay, so Mark kind of alluded to already, said that Runcam came out with a module that went on your goggles, so you could take your standard analog goggles or something that was better LED, like a Sky Zone.
You mean the receiver unit? Yeah, it's
right.
That thing kind of that's the original Shark Bite one, when it was kind of it was going to be a Fat Shark product. But they've kind of, I guess, lost interest in that, and kind of, as Pavel was saying, kind of not really doing anything these days so much with it. So Carl at HDZero's kind of taken it over. He's got some new stuff in development. But in the meantime, we've got this thing, which has got 2 patch antennas in the front here, the white squares.
Okay.
It's an own built-in DVR, and an HDMI connector to your goggles. And then obviously it's got 2 additional antennas mounts on the top for omnis or kind of wide beam crosshairs or patches or whatever you prefer. So yeah, that's kind of the receiver on there.
Oh, interesting. All right, so this was originally Shark Bite, and then it switched over to Zero HD. Got it. All right, now it's starting to be a lot more. I'm starting to get this more. All right, so As I understand, also because I have a friend who's playing with this right now, is the VTXs are kind of limited as far as power range. They haven't come out for the full watt yet.
Yeah, at the moment you've got the 200 milliwatt Whoop boards, which is what Mark held up, which is what I've put in my little F1 wing here, which is, as Adam was saying, your kind of sacrificial model, you know, high risk kind of thing.
Yeah.
But even that is, you know, fairly respectable. You know, it's kind of, you get a better range and things out of the equivalent, you know, analog kind of thing. There's not so much breakup and multipathing, especially out at altitude and clear air. It's fantastic, and it's great for most needs. And then of course there's the
So it's very clear, you're saying then, right?
It's very good, yeah. And there's a 500 milliwatt board, which is a double stacked board. They have had some issues with those. They are pretty good, and they're obviously higher power, and you can get, you know, a fair bit further out with one of those. But the 1 watt board is what everybody's waiting for.
Oh, interesting. And
Yeah.
so how much are the cameras, just the camera itself without the VTX?
They're not so much more than a decent analog camera, really. They're kind of around between sort of you know, $40 and $55.
Okay.
So
but I have to. But we have to add $45 to $55. That's pretty much absolute top-notch, high-end analog camera in comparison.
Yeah.
Of course. So I use I got the Foxier Digisight V2. That's not the newest anymore. This is a nano size cam and has pretty decent image. This one was about 49 euros at a German retailer. The funny thing, yeah, the nice thing on the Digisight V2 is it also has analog output, so I can switch it into analog mode and can basically install 2 receivers or 2 VTXs on the plane. The digital one and an analog one, and then I just switch the camera to analog mode and fly long range with more output power on analog, and then I switch back to digital if I want to stay close range and in HD. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, nice touch that. Yeah. I was kind of lucky enough to get a couple of the Runcam. I don't know, you can barely see it, it's a tiny little thing. The micro, the Runcam HD micro V1s.
Wow.
Had a couple of those, and yeah, it's a vast improvement over the previous Nano Runcam.
Yeah, that wasn't brilliant.
Yeah, it's just fantastic, and there's whisperings of a V2, and there's the new Nano, the HDZero Nano as well, which has got the same sensor as my micro ones, but in the Nano case with an M8 lens instead of the M12.
So how much is the VTX, the 200 that's out right now? Just the VTX 200?
Yeah, I think they're kind of like, $50, $60, something like that. They're not terrible, you know.
All right, so you're adding this together, about $100 for a camera and VTX for a plane. It's not as bad as $150 for DJI, but it's starting to get more reasonable. And with more competition, hopefully that price will come down.
Yeah, I think so. You know, there's development will continue, and other companies maybe pick up the chipset and start developing as well. Then it'll kind of spread and you know, kind of go along like that. And there's already more options coming along. I mean, HDZero, they made, instead of the regular little kind of 8 centimeter MIPI cable, there's a 250, which is great for that little sonic wing, because, you know, it takes the camera from the nose and the VTX can go in the root of the wing there and not on top of the battery or inside. You know, it's you know, fantastic.
What I want to do now is hit a 3-minute break and then come back. I want to ask about a little bit more about this, you know, your cameras, and more in particular, is this the kind of thing once you have one on your plane, do you find that you're gonna have to put them on all your planes because you just enjoy it so much? So I want to find out about that. That was the major criticism that people said about the DJI system. Once you own it, it's just like once you see it, once you put it on the goggles and you see it work, it's like you can't go back to analog. So is that what you find, or you guys have found? So we'll hit that in 90 seconds. Hey, welcome back. We all had our opportunity to drink a few more beers and go to the bathroom and all this other stuff. So we're here back live, and we're just talking to Rory G about HDZero. And the question I have for you, Rory, is the one that it's the same thing. I've heard this now from every single guy who has a set of DJI goggles, which is I put the DJI goggles on, I put it on one plane, and all of a sudden I had to get rid of all my analog. I can't fly a plane without analog. And you look at it, and let's say you have 10 planes, that's $1,500 you have to come up with right away. So it's one of the things, like, if I don't want to touch it because I know that I'll be spending $5,000 before I know it, switching out everything. And then maybe a couple of years from now, that DJI won't be the thing anymore. And that's one of the main things I'm concerned about, is that DJI does not really work that well with INAV as far as, I mean, it works, but It's not the full OSD screen, and I want the full OSD screen. I fly with the numbers. And to me, that's more important than a beautiful picture. But can you get the full OSD screen with the HDZero? Can you also, once you have it, can you go back to a regular analog?
Yeah, you can get the full OSD, well, almost the full OSD. There's a few things that are still under development and not quite working yet. An animated artificial horizon is one of them, unfortunately. So you kind of have to rely on pitch and roll numbers, maybe pop those at the bottom of the screen or something, just, so if you do need any kind of orientation guides, you can read off the numbers on the board and you can see what attitude the plane's at with that. But it's almost identical to your run-of-the-mill analog setup on INAV, but it just looks crystal clear.
Wow.
Is instead of the kind of the fuzzy text you see in your goggles on analog is really nice crisp rendered text that's 100% readable. It's just great. And your other question, going back to analog, it depends on your system, really. I mean, if you've got a really bottom end system that's got a bad camera and a low range or a low power VTX, then yeah, you probably wouldn't want to go back. But if you've got a TBS Pro 32 HV and a Foxeer T-Rex, then it wouldn't be a giant leap to go back to that. And that's I don't know if you can see it over my shoulder there on my mini Drak. That's what's on that, and it's perfectly acceptable. It's nice to fly, but as you were saying, it's not HDZero. It's not HD. And yeah. I've actually just for the first time in a little while taken my Fusion module out of my goggles and put it back in the box.
Wow.
And put the blanking plate back on the goggles.
Awesome. Mark.
Yeah, I think what the point of HDZero is basically it's built to replace analog on the long term. I mean, as you said, Rory, the full OSD support is in development. It's nearly done. A few things are still missing, but I think that will come. The development is pretty much transparent. They communicate what they do. They bring regular updates, beta updates, so we see how the progress is going on. The usability is nearly the same as on analog. So you have your you turn on your plane, you switch the same channel on the module, and that's it. It works. You don't have to pair something. You don't have to activate something. You can watch the video feed of any other pilot that's currently flying. Not like for example, with DJI, yes, you have a spectator mode on DJI that looks like shit because it has no resend package option, so it just sniffs the packages that arrive, and if they are corrupted, you get blocky images. You have no range limit in theory, as long as the signal arrives. Because it's a runway connection, you don't disturb the pilots that stand next to you because your goggles don't send signals, they only receive. And yeah, as I said, the usability is basically the same as analog, and if the development continues as now, I think over a long term and during the next year, it might be capable to completely replace an analog system.
I'm going to go out on a limb, Mark, and I'm going to say it probably will. With the new stuff that's coming, analog is going to be falling back. It's going to be falling back. Yeah. Some of the stuff that's in development and is going to come is going to be pretty special.
Yeah, and as I mean, the power levels are also no topic anymore soon. We will get the 1 watt VTX soon, and when other companies jump in, let it be Ishin, for example, maybe, or maybe even TBS, we will see. They will bring their own VTX with a little fan on it with 2 watts, and then you can fly long range as far as you want. But there's one thing I just want to mention from my point of view. People always say, hey, the image quality is so good, like on DJI or an HDZero or whatever. And when I decided, or when I had to decide what camera I buy, I got the Foxier Digisight V2 instead of the Runcam Nano HD. And then people said, nah, the Runcam Nano HD has much better image, better colors, and better contrast and whatever. But in my opinion, the image quality, the colors, the contrast, and whatever you have there, it doesn't matter. I want to see where I fly. And if you want to see where you fly, you want to have a low contrast, because you want to have dark areas bright and bright areas dark. So you have a wide dynamic range. And if the colors are absolutely spot on and perfect, like on my phone camera, for example, or if they are slightly off, I don't care. I just want to see where I fly. If I want to look beautiful, nice, crisp HD footage afterwards, I put my GoPro in the plane. And I don't care about that when I'm flying.
That it makes total sense, and that's, to be honest, exactly what it should be. A flight cam needs to have the widest dynamic range possible.
Absolutely.
So you can, like you said, go to the deepest shadows to the brightest highlights and still see what you're flying into. And it has to have a really good, sort of program and sort of firmware on it that allows the transition between bright sunlight and deep shade to be handled effectively and to look great. And the problem with the original Runcam Nanos, they were okay. They didn't do a great job of that. The DigiSight was better at that, I think. And the new B3 is fantastic at that. But the thing is, some people didn't really understand that you have to have a wide dynamic range, and with that the image becomes a little washed out. And so they're going, oh, it's, washed out, doesn't look very good, and they go and see the new competition camera and they go, oh, look, but it looks fantastic. And it's, well, yeah, it's kind of tuned more for looking nice than flying nice.
So Adam, you were going to jump in here?
Yeah, I was to say, I kind of agree that this could replace analog when it comes to someone using 5.8 analog. But my question would be, there are people obviously flying 1.3 analog, and do you think it would be the same there? Because from my point of view, I just can't see how it can compare to 1.3 analog. But it depends on how you fly, obviously. If you're going high up in the air, you're going far out and back, then obviously it's going to be absolutely fine. But 1.3 gigahertz just has this massive advantage that these HD systems on 5.8 are just not going to be able to compete with.
Well, that's it. It's going to have the penetration and the propagation of the signal with longer wavelengths, obviously. So for people who like to fly with that and love the 1.3 and 1.2s or whatever, it's probably not going to replace them. They're going to maybe have a little sacrificial plane or a little wing like my F1 thing here, and they're going to whiz that round locally and have a bit of fun with that and enjoy the nice picture. And then they're going to get their big long range bird out and use that on the analog. So, there's going to be places for both. But for 5.8 analog, I don't think there's going to be much call for it afterwards.
I mean, that's
I agree with that.
Yep.
I think that maybe obviously some of the 5.8 analog guys would probably say, well, when it comes to DJI, obviously there's a big disadvantage for some of them with the DJI system, and that's that cuts off at 13 kilometers, and some people using 5.8 analog are wanting to go further than that. But if this HDZero doesn't have that limit, then obviously that removes that barrier. Yeah,
there's some whisperings around that if you're canny enough, you could probably get a glimpse of them online about the new 1 watt HDZero VTX. And then if you heard them, all the sort of questions would just fall away.
I mean, I think the problem for the 1.3 flyers here is we already are in a niche market in general with yeah, I know I repeat Pavel here, but the whole FPV stuff is a small market seen globally. And then we have now split this market in analog, in HDZero, and in DJI. So the market gets even smaller for every single compartment or department here. And the 1.3 gigahertz long range people, the number is even so small compared to the other FPV pilots. I think no manufacturer in the next few years will spend money on developing a 1.3 gigahertz transmitter for HDZero. I'm not sure if it will work, if 1.3 gigahertz signal rate can give the bandwidth you need for the HDZero digital signal, maybe with tweaked encoder settings with lower quality, lower bitrate, lower frame rate maybe, I don't know. I'm not so deep into that, but I don't think that any manufacturer will spend the money on developing that during the next years just to sell maybe 100 or 200 units at the end.
Okay, one of the things I brought up yesterday was about a Singularity antenna, which I put on a plane, and I thought maybe 1 or 2 people would write back, but I got like 30 replies back right away on this. So there's a lot of us 5.8 pilots out there still flying these planes on 5.8. And the one thing I noticed is that when you have the goggles with OLED goggles, Sky Zones, the E-Sheens or whatever, or HDOs. HDO2s, yeah, those are they're fantastic goggles, and you've got some really quality stuff. But some of these cameras, like the little, like the Predator 3s and Predator 5s, are really decent little, 5.8 cameras, and I'm pretty impressed with the quality. I know it's not HDZero or OpenHD or DJI or whatever else we're talking about here, but it's not horrible as far as the text I'm getting on my screen is very readable. I upgraded the goggles this year, and I was like, wow, this is night and day different. So, I mean, I'm maybe are some of you guys coming off of some of these older goggles that were not OLED goggles coming into this?
Yeah, I mean, I had when I first started, I had some really horrible. They weren't even FPV goggles. They were kind of what I started with was video glasses. You got on eBay for like $20 or something. They were terrible things. And then I went on to the head plays. You remember those? I think they were range video. They had the most ironically named brick with them. They were called the Liberator, which basically did everything but liberate you.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were kind of like a software-based thing. You had to turn them on, and they'd boot up, and all that kind of stuff. They were nice goggles, and they were kind of better optics at the time than the old Dominators and things like that. But yeah, the OLED stuff is a big step forward, I think. Right. The clarity.
Have you guys seen the newer cameras that I know they're really designed for the quad guys, but they're actually decent. I was reading the specs on these things. Some of these are 1200 TV lines, which is no goggle can possibly produce that. I don't even know if the DJIs can produce that. But it is, I mean, what they're capable of coming out with on a simple $30, $40 little camera is insane as far as optical quality. And I know what's going on 5.8, and it's not as clear, and it's going to be pixelated and whatever else, but these goggles, the cameras are starting to get better. I've noticed on analog too. I know it's the tail end and it's dying, and that HDZero is going to replace this eventually when it all comes together. But for now, it seems like...
Yeah, it does have a lot to do with the optics as well, Steve. It's the size of the lens matters. If you go from M8 to M12, right. That makes a big difference, and plastic to glass, obviously. Right. And sometimes if you actually opt for a starlight option, you can get more light in, so you get a crisper image kind of thing. But at the same time, you end up with a larger aperture, so you have a smaller depth of field. It starts getting technical. But yeah, there's things like the Foxeer T-Rex. That's really, really kind of top-notch camera, and I love it on my mini Drak. It's really, really nice, and if you can afford it, you can find one. Definitely buy it. It's fantastic, and actually, the Run Cam Micros the HDZero micros that I bought, I actually bought some Foxeer lenses and put them on there because they're the best optics, even better than the Rattel optics.
We haven't gotten into that at all, but I'm thinking that eventually we're going to start talking about the optics of these lenses, because the M8s and the M12s are essentially, those are kind of like anyone can manufacture them. You go on Amazon, you can buy quite a few different lenses on Amazon that will fit these. But when you start talking about going from plastic to glass, and when you actually start to put money in something that costs more than $8 or $12, you're going to start to see even more benefit from this, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, completely. I mean, so this little camera here, you probably can't even see that tiny thing. That is one of the original orange SharkBite Runcam Nano 8 HD cameras, but it has been recased into an M12 printed chassis.
Oh wow!
With a Rattel M12 lens. And it completely transforms the camera, because the regular footage you get from that, you see like the tree line, on the horizon, and there's all this blue haze around it, and it just kind of looks really flat and washed out. That's just because of the M8 plastic lens. You put it in something like this, you give it good optics and an M12 lens, and some of you guys might have seen some pictures in the group, of like my glider flying and things like that. It's completely transforms the camera.
So the M8 and the M12, I'm imagining that's the size of the lens itself, the 8 millimeter versus 12 millimeter as far as the...
It's the thread. It's the thread that goes into the camera.
Okay, threads. Oh, so it's the same thing. It's metric. It's like an M3. Yeah, okay, got it. All right, so larger thread means larger barrel, which means larger sensor.
Well, yeah, larger sort of optics, larger aperture. Well, kind of, just more lens, more light can come through.
Perfect. God, that sounds awesome. Looking forward to that.
I mean, there's one thing digital still cannot compete with analog, and that's low light performance. If I see what the Foxeer Cat 3 in my clouds can perform here in a dark room, for example, where I can barely see something myself sometimes, and then I switch on the camera and I have a clear image. I have not seen any HD camera, not for the DJI and not for HDZero, that can compete with that.
I have.
You have? Okay.
Yeah, I have. I was lucky enough to get one of the first batches of Digisight V3s. Obviously, it had a horrendous greeny blue tint in daylight, but I ordered it with the Starlight lens, and just amazing nighttime low light capability, just fantastic.
Okay.
So yeah, that's if you fly at night or around kind of parking lots with your friends, kind of in the city, absolutely the camera to get. Especially now they fixed their firmware and got it looking lovely again.
Perfect. Now I'm going to switch gears off of cameras unless there's anything else you want to say, you guys want to add in here. Yeah. As I recall, Rory, when we had you on last time, you were the guy that disappeared for quite a few years. You were the Eagle Tree Vector guy for quite a few years. And,
Yeah.
And then you took off and no one saw or heard from you. And then you showed up again in like 2019, 2020, and like, where have I been? This is amazing.
Yeah, I took a break from the hobby after a while. It just, it was one of those things. Sometimes you just have to have a bit of a step back. But then, I kind of saw all the new gear, all the new kit coming and stuff that was out. And I just thought, man, this is like living in the future. So I had to kind of come in and see what was going on and get back into it all and things. So it's just huge leaps and bounds from sort of 7 years ago, 8 years ago, when you'd have an easy UHF from Immersion RC and the receiver would be the size of a packet of cigarettes. And VTX is huge as well, and everything. If you wanted something, you had to build it. You couldn't just go to on a website and buy whatever you needed. It was usually involved hours in the workshop.
So that's interesting. So it brings up the topic of flight controllers. Now, I'm going to watch Mark get excited here because he has definite opinions on this. So I was thinking about the next version of flight controllers, and what I decided on was this right here. This I'm holding up. I don't know if you can see it. This is a Maytech H743. And so what are you going to put in your planes going forward as far as flight controllers in the next year here?
F765 wings.
F765 wing?
Yeah, the WSE. Yeah, I've got a few of those now. That's what we're putting on it. Things going forward, I think.
So that Luke, and I think Mark is the same thing, right, Mark?
F45 WSE.
Because I've got one of those on order as well, thanks to Mark's recommendation.
Yeah, I mean the F405 is okay. It has less UARTs, it has less power capabilities, but it's still flight proven, and I think it's the best bang for bucks. The F405 WSE. I have an F765 wing here. I have an F765 WSE on the shelf that will come into the clouds. But after all, F405 is still my go-to flight controller for most builds.
So the only reason I got the 765 is I wanted to get 3 of something, and I didn't want to limit myself to 405 for 4 of them. So there wasn't much thought that went into the decision, really.
So the F405 WSE is the F405 wing, just been miniaturized. It's essentially the same pinout, and it's
and it has a new barometer. It has the DPS 310 barometer.
The 310 replacing the BMP 280, right? Yep. Okay, so that's pretty exciting stuff. But I think also, does it have a camera switcher on? I think it has a camera switcher as well. No camera switcher? Okay.
No camera switcher. That's the only downside. But on the other hand, it still flies. It flies with the same INAV target. So yeah.
The reason I bring this up is yesterday, Powell said something, and if you start to listen to Powell speak over the last few years, you can kind of tell what's on his mind. And so what he said yesterday was, he said that on the he's coming out with a new gyro filter for gyro, I believe it was, and he wanted to use something that has a few more CPU, use up a little more CPU bandwidth. And so what he came up with was this idea of using the H series processor. If you can run this filter, if it works, then this will be a filter that will be available in INAV, will only work on the H series. And he said, if it doesn't work, we can pretend like I never even worked on it. Essentially is what he paraphrased. But what I heard him saying is, guys, I'm thinking of ways to use more processing power in the future. And so I want something that, even though we've been talking about the F405 wing, I flew with my F405 wing. I bought it in 2018. I'm still flying it today. But going forward, are we going to start to see some of this firmware, where you're going to start seeing features that are going to be only for more robust processing power flight controllers? What do you think, Darren?
Probably in the future. I mean, there's dual core versions of the H series, so I think that's something that, again, Powell's mentioned in previous podcasts. But yeah, it's in the future. I don't think you're going to see huge amounts of difference over the next year or so. But give it a couple of years, and then probably will be a big advantage for the H series.
Mark?
I mean, in my opinion, or as far as I see it, processing power is not our problem. It's not currently, and I think it won't be in the next 1, 2, or 3 years. Maybe it depends a little bit on the craft. If you want to use INAV with all its feature on a small 5-inch quad, it is possible. It's doable, and that's also be able to fly acrobatics and smooth, and also use all the navigation features. You want to have a loop time of or a loop rate of 2 or 4 kilohertz. Then an F4 can get to its limits. But beside these edge cases, on rings we have 1 kilohertz loop rate by default. On any bigger copter like 8-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch, whatever, where you want to use fully autonomous flight stuff, also 1 kilohertz is more than enough. Look at autopilot. Autopilot runs on an F4 or 5 without problems. It has so much more processing stuff going on in the background with the extended Kalman filters and all this stuff. It just runs on 500 hertz loop time, I think, on planes and even on most multi-rotors, and it works just fine without any problem. And I think that won't change during the next year. So processing power is not the problem. The problem we have currently is only on the F411 and F722 processors. They don't have enough storage. That's the main downside. Okay, so we're taking a poll here. So Darren, what's your go-to flight controller from 2022 going to be?
Whichever one fits the plane best, to be honest. I've got an F765 from my Crosswind Mini. I've got an F405 for a project. So it'd probably be a toss-up between those and maybe VH 743 as well. But it's just going to be whichever one is suited for the plane the best.
I'm going to ask everybody. All right, Adam, what do you think? What's going to be your flight controller for 2022?
I'm not too sure yet. I mean, over the last year, I've been sticking the F765s in. I like that board just because it's got the higher amperage BECs on board. It's got the video switcher. The 405 kind of annoyed me a little bit just because they made a really weird decision to switch the pins on the camera and the VTX, so they're not the standard layout. So I burnt a couple of cameras.
Oh yeah.
On one of those a while back, and
so what you're talking about is the 405. It goes from 5 volt instead of being ground 5 volt and signal. It's 5 volt ground signal, and
exactly,
yeah, a lot of people burn up a VTX for a camera doing that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you get a bit lazy and you look at the end pin, you think, right, the signal's this end, so that's where it goes, and then you don't look at the rest of them. And I've burnt a couple of cameras doing that on the 405, so I never really forgave Matic for that. But yeah, the 765 just seems to be a good all-rounder. It does it all. You know, if you're going to move it onto a new plane in the future, it's pretty future-proof for the time being, it seems. I've got a H743 going on my Alba Bird just because I thought I'd give one a go. I've also got a few other random FCs. I just tried different ones. I've got a 722 WPX going on my Spec Wing.
Yeah.
And what else have I got? I've got the yeah, I can't think of what other flight controllers I've got at the moment. Actually, I think I've got a 765 WSC as well. Actually, yeah, I've got one of them.
And Rory, what about yourself? What are you going to be working with next year?
Well, I thought I'd go on a retro kick and rock some old school Eagle Tree, man. But yeah, I've got the F765s as well. I've got a couple of those in the wings behind me up there, the Z2 and the mini Drak, and there's a 405 coming. So, you know, that'll go in the little F1.
Interesting. So everyone has their own like little takes on what they like, and so the F765 tends to be good. One question that I have for you, Mark, and yet Rich, you can get to you anyway. On the F405 WSC, did they switch the pins back to going from black, red, and white, or is it still red, black, white? Like
yes. Luckily, all UARTs have the same pin layout on that one, and yeah, that was really annoying on the old one. I mean, I have never burned something, but then I knew when I want there are 3 UARTs on one side on the board and 3 UARTs on the other side on the other end of the board, and if I want to switch devices between the sides, I every time have to repin them before I can plug it in. So yeah, this was a little bit annoying.
So they fixed it on the new one, yeah?
Yeah, the new one has always ground 5 volts and then TX or RX. I don't know the order at the moment.
I'm sure they had their reasons, but I don't know what it was. It was an odd one.
Maybe just a layout reason that they had to cross somewhere from the traces or so. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah,
I'm sure it made their life easier somehow, but not ours.
I think it was the 722 WPX that has the UART in between the motor and the signal. So the idea was they were able to use the telemetry off of your 32-bit ESC running BL Heli. But then I noticed on the H743 that they have the UART in there, but they don't really call it out per se. It's like they've before in the documentation, and so I'm wondering. I posted the question: Is anyone using this 32-bit ESC, and how is it working for you? And I've got a bunch of kind of mixed reviews. Some people say it works great. Some people say they have problems. Mark, what do you think about that?
I only have 2 planes where I have BA Heli 32 with telemetry, and that's the Speed AR ring with the Teco F7, I think, ESC, and the clouds, of course. And I'm just looking, I have the F765WSE here, if they have the pin out here the same with the RX pad in the middle of the motor pads. Let me check that. Wait a second. This is S3, S4. Where are the motor pads? Yeah. Here they did the same. I'm not sure if you can see that in the camera. On the
Looking as close as possible.
Yeah, on the bottom right, you see S1 and S2 for motors, and there is RX5 in the middle to use the telemetry from the ESC. And this will make my wiring also easier, because here I had to split the cable and then put 2 together on 1 pin and plug it into the RX5 on this board. That's on a different position. And here I can just integrate the telemetry pin into the 3-pin to POR connector and connect it directly to the flight controller. That's much easier. I think they make it on most of the current boards. The F722WPX has that. F45WSE, I'm not sure. I think they also did.
I think it's the same as, I don't know. Let's take a look.
I'm not sure about the
WSE.
No, I think the WSE has only S1 ground and S2 ground, right? Only 4 pins in a row. It has no telemetry input directly.
Right.
And, but what I like about the F722WPX is that on the bottom of the board, they have the TX1 pad. So if you don't use telemetry, you can still put a UART device on there. So they have at least the pad broken out. I think on this one you don't have, so you cannot use UART5 as a full duplex.
Perfect. So we geeked out on as far as planes is concerned, and we've geeked out on electronics. We talked about Open HD and HDZero.
Just before we move on from flight controllers, there's one I just had to look up because I want to try it out, which might be quite good for small builds, and that is the F405 Mini TE, which is not a fixed wing integrated PDB, but it's a tiny little F405 which got the barometer on it, 6 UARTs, 12 PWM. So it's a fully featured F405, but it's a tiny little thing.
So can it be powered from battery voltage?
No. Well, actually, it says on here it can accept 6 to 30 volts DC in, but obviously there's no throughput for the ESC. So you'd need your own current sensor, but I'm thinking for like a nano goblin, something like that might be brilliant. So I think I might get one of those just to try on like a small lightweight build.
Ooh, perfect. Which one is this again?
It's the F405 Mini TE. So it's like
so it's the F405 Mini. It's a newer version. They put a barometer on it then.
Yeah. The old one didn't have a baro, which was a bit of an annoyance.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, sounds really cool. Awesome. We talk about all the geek stuff as far as planes and electronics and cameras and all this other stuff. But I really wanted to just kind of focus on, since this is the last show of the year and since this is our holiday, this is really about flying. And so I'd like everyone to, off the top of your head, I'm going to ask you, what was the flight of the year for you? So who'd like to go first? Can someone think of Everyone's like thinking. Everyone's doing this.
I know which one it was for me. I went to a big rock, which I'll have to quickly look up the name of after this and say it after you guys are gone. In Edinburgh, in the centre of Edinburgh, and I FPV slope soared my new Eat Flight Radian from the top of the rock. That was great. Yeah, big mountain.
Slope soared a Radian.
Yeah, slope soared a Radian. It was like 30-mile-an-hour winds with Edinburgh in the background. Yeah.
Is that the one you made a detail out of?
No, this was actually a brand new one that I got only a few weeks before. Put an FPV pod on top. Didn't have INAV or even an OSD, just camera, VTX.
And you're up there for hours having a good time with that.
Yeah, really good time.
Is that the night Radian with all the lights and stuff like that?
Yes, it's a new non-flight test night Radian. Yeah.
All right. So I've had a number of people crash that plane, and when they put the lights on, and it's drawing so much electricity, it's causing battery sag with that.
Okay. Yeah, no, I haven't had any problems with that, but yeah.
Yeah, just be careful with it at night when you have the thing fully lit up, because I think what happens, it has so many LED lights on it that it draws too much current.
Since then, I crashed it, so I had to rebuild the nose. And so I ripped out all the electronics. I replaced it all with my own stuff. I put in a couple of Maytech BCs, one for the lights, one for the servos, and I've got an F4, an F765 WSE in it. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, Adam, what's your sled of the year, do you think?
Mine would definitely be the one with the mini Talon, the low river run. I mean, I've been planning it for a while. I got my eye on that bridge, and I just happened to find a mountain that I could go to the top and start the flight with. And yeah, I've been wanting to do it for a long time. I found a really good launching spot, and I managed to get decent weather on 3 days where I could try it, because it's quite windy in that area, you see, around the mountains. So it's pretty hard to find a day where you can actually get up there in the right conditions. And also with the peak of the mountain where I started, sometimes that can just be cloud up there, you can't see up there, so it had to be the right conditions. So I had 3 goes at it, and yeah, the third one is the one that I posted, and it was just, yeah, it really got the adrenaline going, because even on that the video I posted, there were parts of that run I'd never tried before. For those of you who watched it, there's kind of in the middle of this field, there's this gap between these 2 trees, and when I saw that on the second run, I thought, right, I must do that. Sorry, I saw it on the first run. I thought I must do that on the second run. But on my second run, when I came along to do it, there was a bunch of cows in this gap, so I couldn't do it. So the third attempt was actually my first attempt. The third attempt, which was the one I posted, that was my first try at going through that gap. And I nearly got caught out because there was some branches that I didn't quite see until the very last second.
So it was your second attempt to scare the cows away, so you get your third attempt, is what you're saying.
Yeah, right? And each attempt was a different day. So
okay.
Yeah, so it was a different day each time. So the third time, yeah, when I went back and did it, I managed to get that tree gap done. And yeah, and going under the bridge was quite nerve-wracking. You know, it's one of those moments that you just know that. I just knew if I didn't make it, I was going to hit the side of that bridge. It was going to go in the water. It was just going to be a complete loss. Oh. And it's funny actually, because in a way that the one I published, it looked quite smooth and I went through quite easily. But on my first 2 attempts, it was a bit rocky, the wind, and it kind of was. It looked like I wasn't going to make it, and I dropped in and just ducked under at the last second. Whereas yeah, the one I published, it looked pretty smooth, and I kind of lined up really nicely with it and went straight through. And the funny thing is, I made this run and everything went pretty well, and I managed to keep pretty close to the ground and didn't hit anything, luckily. And then when I finished that run, a lot of people probably won't know unless they read the description in the video. I finished that, I pulled up and came back to where I was located, and I came into land, and there was a bit of a crosswind coming down the side of this hill. And I was landing on a really narrow road where there was a fence right next to it. And this crosswind just really caught me off guard. And it just basically pushed me into the fence as I landed. And it just basically wrecked the mini Talon. So
Jeez,
that flight was the last flight of the mini Talon, where I finally got the. I finally managed to get the flight done that I wanted to do with it. So yeah, it was a fitting end for the model. It got the job done, but I wasn't going to bother repairing it again. It was just time to move on. I was wanting to get the Talon Pro built, you see, so I wasn't too upset about smashing it on the landing. But yeah, it was just kind of strange that I got the perfect run and I crashed it on the easiest bit, which is the landing. You know, one of the days.
Rory, what do you think?
Short walk of shame.
Luke, can you say something?
Yeah, it was Holyrood Rock, and the peak was Arthur's Seat in Edinburgh. Just now found it.
That's your vacation spot. Yeah, you get your Radian together, and you can head out there.
Yeah,
little FPV module on there and have fun, huh? Yeah, awesome. Rory, what do you think was the flight of the year for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was my little F1 wing, actually, while it was still on analog. It was middle of the summer, just kind of rocking around the local field, and just as I was flying around, saw this tiny gap that just looked so tempting in some trees. They were quite big trees, kind of 30 meters tall, 20 meters or something like that. But they were kind of surrounding a kind of stagnant pond, shall we say. So you had to come round over the forest and then have a nice glide slope in towards over the pond. And there was like 4 or 5 trees, and there was a tiny gap that was basically smaller than most people's TVs these days. Yeah, and I kind of thought, I've got to try it. So I lined up a few times and did a couple of runs, and just pulled out at the last minute and popped over the tops of the trees. I thought, that's doable. And came around again and just kind of went straight in and aimed directly for the gap, and the little F1 just went straight through it. It was unbelievable, and I thought that was really easy. So I thought I'll do it again, and then it did it again, and I was again and again. I ended up doing it like 6 times in a row. Wow. And obviously not as glamorous as river runs or flying down mountains or anything, but it was just for my own amusement, really. And the sacrificial wing at its best, I think.
How about Mark? What do you think? What is your flight of the year?
My flight of the year, I can directly show to you if you want. That was my visit to my friend in West Germany, when I had the best flying conditions I ever had in my career in FPV, with this big valley, a lot of fog, and this whole valley. I'm not sure if you see it on Skype. On the right side of the screen, there are windmills in the back. This is around 11 or 12 kilometers away. So this whole valley is just 10 kilometers pure fog, and I was flying all over to the windmills and back. And yeah, this was the best flight I ever had from just based on the scenery.
Insane! Wow, that's beautiful.
Scenery.
Yeah, so I would say this was my flight of the year, actually.
Wow. Yeah, it's just, yeah. That's like Adam G quality kind of flying right there.
And that was, by the way, also the day when I crashed my AR Wing Pro and damaged it slightly.
Well, it's a bitch hobby. Gives on one hand, takes with the other.
Yeah, I can send you the link.
Wow, beautiful, fantastic. So, Darren, what do you think? What was your flight of the year?
I had a couple actually, but they're all on the same day, so it's all sort of molded into one. It was the day I went to visit the guys at the Funny Farm. And the landscape there is just incredible. You've got so many sort of dips and drops and so many gaps, and just having so much fun just flying around, going for whatever gaps are there. So yeah, a lot of that, again, was sacrificial plane. So that's my little mini AR, which was running like an alpha version of INAV 4.0. And also Maiden's the Dart 250, and that flew perfectly, pretty much. But yeah, it's just hitting gaps, flying low, just an incredible day.
All right, Mark, I'm still seeing your video.
Oh yeah, sorry.
We're still. I lost my desktop. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's
and also I met Charles there, which was fantastic, being all the way from Florida. So yeah.
Wait, you kidding? He was out there?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. He didn't mention that at all, or you didn't mention that either.
No, it was just Charles, a couple of other guys there.
Charles Blackburn, right?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he's always been kind of really active in the group and really good guy.
Speaking of the funny farm, Darren, next year I plan to visit Glenn in the UK. If everything goes well, maybe I can make a stop at your location and we can visit the guys in the funny farm too.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, obviously Luke's in the area as well, so we can all meet up.
Yeah. I'd
go find somewhere to fly. And
Sounds good.
Yeah, maybe hook up with Josh and Andy at some point as well. That'd be cool.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, my flight of the year was a few weeks ago. It was just I'm very fond of the Bixler, like getting up really early in the morning, taking the Bixler up right around sunrise, taking it out. And this was a day that was really foggy out that morning. So I got up over the fog and it was just beautiful. So I'm cloud surfing up there. I'm flying into a state park. All I can see were towers way off in the distance, and I knew kind of like where they were located, and I would fly to them. And then I got out there, and I realized, like, I don't know where back. I'm not certain where home is anymore. And usually, what I can do is look at the freeway, because if I can see the freeway, I know where north and south is. But I couldn't see the freeway because it was all fogged in. So I'm like in real trouble, flipped on, returned to home, and just pray that it'd come back with enough battery to make it. And it was perfect. It landed fine. Didn't really know where it was until it was right over the top of me. Like I was not breathing, kind of a little bit freaked out, but it was just really a nice, and that was an INAV 4.0 release candidate 2 flight. So I just, it was very enjoyable. Yeah. So what about next year, guys? What do you think? What is the big plans for next year? We have big planes or vacations. Mark's talking about a vacation out to the UK, obviously. What do you guys have planned for 2022?
This one, the Tiger Moth. I want to get that thing flying. And it'll be FPV'd as well. There'll be cameras on board, and you'll be able to sit in the cockpit and look out over the nose and things, and there'll be head tracking in the goggles so you can look around and everything. And it's a big plane. It's 3 meters wingspan. It'd be like 16 to 18 kilograms.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to have you on again next year, probably later on next year.
I would say no. I would say we set him a deadline. We will make a special wing talk on Easter, and then Rory will join us, and then this plane is ready.
Easter is kind of cold. I think we had to give them at least till summertime to get it done.
Yeah. I think maybe summertime 2023, to be honest. But yeah,
just let us know when it's ready, and we have you on then.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And I eventually want to kind of get it so like maybe the instrument panels, you can read them off, and maybe there'd be some INAV logic or something be useful for running little servos behind the dials or something. So
I imagine you could already do that with some programming, couldn't you?
Yeah, probably.
Mark,
yeah, probably.
Darren?
Yeah, I mean, I was like, you could maybe grab with an Arduino or ESP32 and just take the MSP signal from a flight controller, and that will give you all the data for the fuel levels, everything.
Could you not even do this with the programming, or
you could do, but then you're relying on the outputs from the flight controller, and depending on how many servos there are, you might run out.
Good point.
I have seen a company. I'm not sure if that was a German company or Swiss. They make dedicated. You have to say something, Rory.
That's the dashboard. That's the instrument panel.
Yeah, I get that working. I think you showed that last time. I remember seeing that.
Yeah, I probably did. I look at this.
Yeah,
it's gonna be awesome.
There's a company in Europe. They make digital instrument panels by your own design. So basically a complete panel with round OLED displays inside and programmable to feed them with telemetry from your flight controller. I think their software uses MAVLink, but INAV can output MAVLink telemetry with no problem. That should work. And they make really in different sizes, whatever you want, complete instrument panel that look like real ones. That's really interesting. I found that link recently. I have to look it up and can send it over to you. Maybe it's interesting.
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. I mean, because I have seen, I think there's a German guy actually. He runs a company where they actually have mechanical dials. So we could try and have a look at both, that, yeah. see what the options are. Because it would be amazing to have an actual mechanical mechanism behind the kind of a 1935 kind of Tiger Moth sort of era plane, because OLEDs are great, and you probably be better to see an OLED in in an FPV camera, but kind of want to keep it old school, man.
No, the problem with the OLED displays is they're quite close to you. So the focus from the FPV camera is you look at the dials and they're blurred half the time. I've seen a video where someone's actually made a mechanical adjuster. So when he tilts his pan down, it actually refocuses the lens on the FPV camera so that the dials are in focus. And then when he pans back or tilts back up, it refocuses back to sort of landscape area.
Yeah, I saw that video. Yeah, that was really clever. Yeah, absolutely. That could be definitely be an option. But I just measured the distance. It's going to be around 200 millimeters, 20 centimeters from the instrument panel to the camera.
That should be fine. I think if you're below 15, that it can get close, but with 20 centimeters distance, that should be fine with the focus. Especially if you have a small lens. If you have a big lens like a 22 millimeters with a wide aperture, then you can get issues. But with a smaller one, that should be fine if you don't want to fly at night.
Yeah, should be great. I think, definitely lots of different options to consider and some new ground to break. I think in mechanical instruments and HD systems and all kinds of things. So yeah, it should be good fun.
Adam, what's your big thing for next year?
I don't think I have any big thing really. It's just I've got a few planes that I'm building, as you know. I probably want to spend a bit more time getting the Drak kind of reliable and get a good setup on that. And I'll be giving DJI a bit of a try. It's enjoyable to fly, and I know Steve, you were saying earlier you haven't, you kind of a bit worried about trying it because everyone says it's so good when you try it, you won't go back to analog. Yeah. I mean, I've tried it and I would fly DJI and analog on the same day, and it wouldn't bother me one bit. I've been quite happy going between the two. And in fact, my DJI goggles are up there and they've gathered dust because I haven't used them for probably about 4 months now.
Okay.
Give me hope. I am going to give it more. It's very impressive. When you put them on, it is very impressive because it's just so clear. It's just like watching your HD footage when you get back from a flight. You download your footage from the memory card and you watch it and it looks really nice and clear. It's just like you get that live while you're doing it. So it is really impressive. But it doesn't ruin the experience of flying analog for me. So I'm going to kind of give DJI a bit of a chance. And I think on my channel, you'll probably see me trying to attempt some of the kind of crazy stuff I try and do with 1.3. I'll be trying to do it with DJI and some patches just to see how it goes. I'm not expecting that it's going to go brilliantly, but I'm going to try it and see what happens. Because I see a lot of people putting out videos of DJI doing kind of range tests, and most of them it's kind of flying high up in the air, straight out, straight back, and giving the kind of statistics on the different antennas and things like that. But I don't see too many people trying to fly really low at distance. The 13-kilometer thing actually doesn't bother me one bit because even on 1.3 gigahertz, I don't really go beyond 13 kilometers, to be honest with you. I don't think I've been 13 kilometers this year. My flying is just, I only use 1.3 to go low and behind things. So yeah, next year, DJI, I'll be giving that a chance on the Spec Wing and on the Alba Bird, and maybe getting that Drak.
Yeah, I think I put a poll out over the summer. I was asking people how far do they really fly typically when they're flying, and most of the people are under 8 kilometers. So
yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. I I don't have a lot of interest in going far unless there's a point of interest that I want to go to. I don't really, it doesn't excite me that much going, doing the let's go up straight up and as far out as I can and far back. That's just not something I really enjoy much, to be honest with you. So maybe when I first got into hobby, I would have done that a few times just to test the equipment, but it's not something I really enjoy now. As you know, flying low is my thing really, and out to maybe up to 10 kilometers.
Sounds cool. Luke, do you have any big plans for next year for flying besides rebuilding your Radian?
No, not really. No, I'm just going to kind of see how it goes kind of thing. I want to get doing more speed run stuff. Want to finally get my composite workflow sourced out and build some composite planes. But that's taken, a year and a half so far, and I've not really made anything worth flying yet, so I wouldn't guarantee that this year.
Hey, Darren, what do you think? What's coming up for next year?
I'm just going to carry on. I've got a couple of planes already that I'm sort of dying to make and just haven't got round to it. But yeah, one of the things I really want to try and get done this next year is to get my sort of big planes up in the air, which, no interest for INAV people because they've just receivers and 30cc engines.
Line of sight.
I just want to get my big planes up in the air and have fun with those.
Okay, Mark, what do you think? What are your big plans? I mean, you made a big plane this year, and that was pretty expensive too, as I recall.
Yeah, and it's still not finished. That's the problem. So
the clouds, yeah.
The clouds, yeah. I mean, it's flyable. I still have to repair the pen and tilt. I've done nothing during the last months on that plane since my last flight. So I was focusing on rebuilding the RAFAX. But yeah, the clouds project will still drag me into 2022, and still some work needed. So I still need the battery. I need to revise the pen and tilt. Get to figure out how I fix the CG shift when I release the parachute, because my problem right now is when the CG is perfect for flying, as soon as I release the parachute, it's about 180 or 200 grams that are missing in the bag. So as soon as it hangs on the parachute, it will go nose down and land that way instead of flat. So that was my problem on the parachute test. Yeah, I have to figure that out. And beside that, some other projects, I've nothing big planned. So still that micro VTOL topic is up. That will start hopefully soon. The FunJet. Yeah, Henrik, I will build the FunJet. I know he is listening right now. But yeah, beside that, no big projects. Oh yeah, and of course testing HDZero.
Look at the HDZero going. Well, fantastic. Man, it sounds like you had a lot of good stuff. No, my stuff is like this past year I've really started to figure out how to solder properly, and that was something that held me back in the hobby. So now I'm going back through all my planes and ripping out all the crappy soldering jobs I've done and all the builds. And we've had not really the greatest weather over the last few weeks. So I was able to get out to a few flights recently, but it's gonna be raining for like the next week here all the way through Christmas. And so I'll be spending lots and lots of time rebuilding planes. And I've got a number of planes. When I get done with these junky old planes, I'm going to start building the new ones. So I'm finally going to finish the RAFX and get that flying. I was hoping to get it done by this year, but it'll be next year. There'll be a lot of planes I'll be maidening and remaidening, having a good time with. So I'm really looking forward to 2022. INAV 4.0 came out right in the perfect time. So that's it. I really we've turned 3 years old this week, yesterday. So I really want to thank everyone who's participated in the group. It's been really great. Mark and Darren, you guys really have done a lot to help out. I mean, Mark is pretty much our technical pilot in charge anyway, but realistically, it's hard to believe that it's 3 years old, isn't it? Huh?
Yeah, and that's the 25th Ring Talk. That's monthly, so... okay, it was not monthly at the beginning, but yeah, 2 anniversaries in the same month. Long time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's no, and it's been great, and we've been noticing that when people come in, and pretty much what we're trying to do, we're at a point right now where you're starting to see stuff like the HDZero. If you want to see this work, you actually have to have more people in the hobby. So we need more people doing flying INAV and flying beta flight with the quads and whatever else that use the equipment. So if we could make it easier for people to get into the hobby, then there's more people who will be joining us, and there's more money coming in to buy the stuff and make it cheaper for us in the future so we can afford to buy it. Hopefully, I really would like to see HDZero. And you guys talked me into it. I'm going to get that going next year as well. Yeah, Rory's like all thumbs up. But yeah, so thank you, and thanks everyone in the group who takes their time. When someone writes in and asks a question, sometimes people don't have, keep in mind, we only speak one language, unfortunately, in the group, but even though we're a worldwide group. And so if someone has a question, if you can work with them, as I know it's easy to sit there and like make fun of them, or say you asked a stupid question, or you didn't do this right, or whatever. But the people who take their time and really help out really does help us in the hobby, because I've seen people who struggle build the first plane, go from that to all of a sudden they're on their 10th plane and they're having the greatest time in their life. And that's kind of what the group is all about. So thank you so much for doing that. And thank you for joining us this year. Is there anything else you guys want to say before we sign off?
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, this will be available as a podcast. I've set that up so a few guys wanted podcast versions of this. I will be a bit slow doing it because of work, but should be
after the start of the year, probably. Darren needs some time off, man. I've not seen him this tired before.
I'll get it done sort of Thursday-ish, hopefully, maybe Friday. It won't be long. But also, I'm going to mention that I may have something coming in January, because then it will make me work a bit harder to get it ready for you, because I've had something in progress for a little while. I was hoping to have it ready for now with the INAV 4 release, but yeah, shit happens. But January.
I'm always interested to hear what's happening with Darren, because he just has perfectly amazing things he works on. He never quite mentions it, and just kind of like, oh, by the way, I just did this. And just, so it's awesome. We're looking forward to hearing that. Big surprise, whatever that is. And so appreciate that. And plus, he has a great channel. If you want to find out about INAV radar, or how to set your flaps, or if you want to find out about, we didn't even get into Rory, but Rory has played with Ethos this year, and he likes that. So really quickly, you want to say anything about Ethos before we go?
It's just really user-friendly, great graphic interface. Development is really fast-paced. They've got, I think, the alpha firmware, or lures and all kind of stuff like that. So they're testing all that to see kind of updates on people doing turbine lures and all this kind of stuff. So the scripts are coming.
So is that going to be you think the system of the year next year?
I don't know. I mean, there's EdgeTX and everything like that. I mean, because the development on OpenTX is kind of stalled almost, so it seems. There hasn't been a release for that for a little while now. Yeah. HDX is kind of growing, and I think Ethos is going to definitely be a firm favorite.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm watching this morning before I got here. Went to my flying field and watched somebody take his brand new Viper. It's a $600 Horizon hobby plane. It's a jet subtype. Yeah. And,
the EDF Vipers or something, was it? Or
yeah, EDF Viper. That's the one. Yeah, it's like about 1400 millimeter. It's a big plane, right?
Yeah.
He turned into confetti.
Oh.
And so Black Friday wasn't that long ago when he bought it. So, and he was flying Spectrum, and I'm like, I asked him, I said, are you ever going to get rid of Spectrum and try something else that actually works? And he's like, I don't know. Spectrum is so easy. I just love it so much. So I'm hoping that Ethos is that thing where it's like bridge the gap between Spectrum and real radio systems.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, you see on the FR Sky groups, loads of Spectrum guys, they're coming over and changing brands, and they wanted to try it. So it could be good.
Perfect. Okay. Well, that sounds fabulous. Well, if you want to find out all about Ethos and all that stuff, you can check out Darren's channel. Mark has a channel as well. It's mostly in German, but he does have some English videos as well. And so, and he's always working on interesting things. And so he just, if you want to find out, I mean, definitely those are like, should be the most, you should have those as subscriptions, both Darren and Mark's channel. And obviously, if you're watching us on YouTube, we were watching Mark's channel anyway. So please subscribe, and until next time.
And don't forget to subscribe also to Rory and Adam. They have great channels with fantastic flying footage on both.
Oh my gosh! Before I forget, oh my god, oh, sorry about that. Yes, Rory and yes, most Adam in particular does amazing things. He just goes out and does awesome things, and just kind of like. So these are both definitely the channels to check out. Adam G, what's your channel? Adam G does FPV.
That's it. That's the one.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And what about Rory? What's your channel?
I haven't kind of posted on it or used it for a long time. I can't even remember the name, to be honest.
Well, look in the group and see if he has.
Maybe I posted it somewhere. You'll have to have a look. Yeah, have a look.
Yeah, next time we post that. Rory always has interesting things to post about. It's just absolutely fun. So looking forward to next year. Everyone have a great, safe holiday season and stay well, and we'll catch you next year. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye.